Apple announced Apple Intelligence, its new generative artificial intelligence initiatives, which include a partnership with OpenAI to use its ChatGPT technology yesterday at their big event. Elon Musk has threatened to ban Apple devices from his companies if Apple integrates OpenAI's technology at the operating system level, and has now even said it's not out of the question for him to create a mobile phone himself. Elon is warning that Apple's handing over user data to a third-party AI and believes it's absurd that Apple isn't smart enough to make its own AI but can somehow ensure OpenAI will protect user security and privacy. Today, let's cover Elon's comments, the likelihood he's now going to make his own mobile phone, and what might this look like, and who's going to make it: Tesla, SpaceX, or Starlink, or X? I've got Hans Nelson joining us. He has his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. Thanks, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
This is right up your alley. We've been talking about this, and it's now coming. It's you shared a number of clips that show that Elon has been thinking about mobile phones, and he's actually just yesterday said that he might do this. So let's start off with the story of what actually happened. You've got Tim Cook of Apple at his big event yesterday, and we'll play a little bit of that. And he said it's personal, powerful, and private, and it's integrated into the apps you rely on every day. Introducing Apple Intelligence, our next chapter in AI. Elon immediately replied to him saying, I don't want it. Either stop this creepy spyware or all Apple devices will be banned from the premises of my companies. If Apple integrates OpenAI at the OS level, then Apple devices will be banned at my companies. That is an unacceptable security violation. Basically, it looks like it's going to be very useful for us iPhone users. It's built in, but it is creepy because in order to provide its value, it's looking deep into everything about who I am, who my parents are, where I live. And Apple has always been very much about security and privacy, keep it within my phone. But when they partner with OpenAI, who could be integrated into the system, now they're sending my data to a third party. Elon is just livid about this. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the thing that what we're seeing is that obviously AI technology has come a long way over the past couple of years, and LLMs specifically, and the type of LLMs that OpenAI has really spearheaded with ChatGPT, they can do a lot of stuff. But obviously, the more information they know about you, the user, the more they can provide answers that are specific to what you are wanting or needing in a moment. And that's been one of the challenges so far for OpenAI, is like loading in all of this contextual data for the LLM to have at its disposal when it's trying to have a conversation with you, so that it can make that conversation as helpful and useful as possible. Well, Apple obviously has all of this data. It's on your device already. And this is one of the, like you said, marketing strengths that Apple has, is they are known as the privacy and security company over and above the other companies. That doesn't mean that they're exceptional at it, but they're generally viewed as the best option available. And what they have built in here with the Apple Intelligence is the ability of an LLM to have access to, or just these artificial intelligence tools to have access to all the data that you have about you and your schedule and your preferences and all these things, that whatever that data is that's available on your device, that they're trying to make that available to these AI tools. And they have their own in-house private cloud, and they have their own in-house artificial intelligence tools, and they're got their privacy infrastructure around that. But what they're offering now is also the ability for you to say, hey, I don't want to use the Apple version. I want to use the OpenAI version, because obviously OpenAI has a very large presence in the AI market right now. When you think of an LLM, you may not even know what an LLM is, but you've probably heard of ChatGPT. And there's going to be a lot of people that want to use ChatGPT when they want to do something where they're talking to an AI assistant. And just like Apple allows Google to be a search provider on the iPhone, and they sell that to Google, like people may not understand this, Google pays Apple a lot of money to be able to be one of the first choices of a search provider on the iPhone. And in all likelihood, that is exactly what's happened here, is that Microsoft and OpenAI have paid a lot of money to Apple in order to be an option for people to use these AI assistants that are developed by Microsoft and OpenAI. And the question that Elon is raising is, okay, what is the privacy and security infrastructure that exists when you are entering into a complicated business relationship like that? How does ChatGPT be useful to you without having data about you that you may or may not be comfortable with them having? And how do you make informed decisions about what data should and should not be provided to
Hmm.
OpenAI? And I think he's got a lot of legitimate concerns. It seems, based on some of the stuff that we'll be going through here in a bit, that Elon may be shooting from the hip a little bit, and jumping to some conclusions and some assumptions that I don't know if they're necessarily accurate at this point in time. But if not, he'll get to the bottom of those. But that said, he also may have access to information that we don't have access to, and that's always another possibility. And he may
Hmm.
be right about things that we don't have any data that we can look to draw that conclusion, but he has that data. So
Hmm.
that's a question. But one of, even stepping back from all of that, one of the things that we know is that Elon absolutely does not trust Sam Altman and the OpenAI team right now, based on my observations of
Hmm.
the explosion between Sam and the board and the exits of Ilya Sutskever and their head of safety. I think his name was also Jan, here recently, that whatever is happening there at OpenAI, there has been a consolidation of power that gives me pause about their ability to really focus on user safety, and that
Hmm.
organization is not captured by forces that we can trust. Um, and so there's that. And then when you say, okay, that whatever that entity is that lives at the forefront of this AI research that seems very sketchy, and there's a lot of questions about how it's operating and how it works, and it's in bed with Microsoft, and then you add on top of that, like, that's already a big scary entity. The whole reason that Elon started OpenAI in the first place was so that it could be an antidote to DeepMind and their partnership with Google. And so to have it turn into basically the mirror image of DeepMind and Google
Hmm.
now is OpenAI and Microsoft. And now for that entity also to partner with Apple,
Apple.
now you've got like a trifecta of powerhouses that
Mm.
is in the pole position to control what this next wave of technology evolution looks like. That I think, the user interface of an LLM, we talk about interface changes between, the laptop then to the phone and to the tablet, and that these are phase changes in technology. And I think the user interface of an LLM is another candidate for something that will change the way that we interface with technology. And maybe we use all the same devices, but we talk to them a lot more. And that's what Apple is trying to ride that wave, and they're trying to do it with their own technology and then partnering with OpenAI. And between them and Microsoft and OpenAI, they look to be in a position where they can capture a lot of the market and a lot of the data. And that when you take that and you feed that back into
Hmm.
a loop of, we're trying to make this AI as smart as possible, and then you layer in Elon's very significant concerns that he has been shouting from the rooftops for over a decade about safety around how we develop that intelligence. So it's people that have at their disposal all of the data, all of the money, all of the compute, all of the political power and technological prowess necessary to develop an artificial superintelligence. And those organizations are also organizations that he thinks have been captured by what he calls the woke ideology, which he thinks pose an existential risk to the future of humanity. And that's why he's concerned right now. Whether he's
Mhm.
right to be concerned or not, people need to make their own judgments. But we have to give Elon his due in the fact that he calls a lot of these issues far, far in advance of when other people do. Everyone says that he's crazy when he does. And then in retrospect, 10 years later, it usually comes out that, yeah, on
Mhm.
those things, he was
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
All right. So we'll dive deeper into the privacy security, whether it's right or not. But this is so big that Elon's now talking about actually maybe creating his own phone. And most people will say, oh, no, he's not going to do it. But just watch this, right? Just take a look at all this information here. So, first of all, just yesterday, this guy, Mike Ben, says, give me a Grok phone with Grok integrated in reply to Sam Altman, who said, very happy to be partnering with Apple to integrate ChatGPT into their devices later this year. Elon replied, saying, if Apple actually integrates woke, nanny AI spyware into their OS, we might need to do that. We might make our own phone. This is 6 months ago. Elon said, if there's an essential need to make a phone, I'll make a phone. Let's watch this.
I don't think there's a real need to make a phone. If there's a essential need to make a phone, I'll make a phone, but I got a lot of fish to fry.
So at that time, he really did not want to do this. But of course, he's now being pushed to the table here. I just wanted to share this because this is funny or interesting. Unbreakable Tesla Cyberphone. And then it's just a beautiful design. There's, if you start getting your mind to thinking about what would he create, maybe it's a cyber inspired, maybe it's not. We'll talk about that too, where it would actually reside, this phone division, its own company, XAI, Tesla, Starlink. Warren Redlich posted this, calling it now, X will partner with Samsung to manufacture an X phone. It will look better than any of these that I just hacked together. XOS will be open source to assure user privacy is protected. The phone will be optimized for the X app, of course. It will also seamlessly integrate with Tesla cars and robotaxis, Optimus robots, Boring Company transit systems, and Neuralink devices. Direct connection to Starlink will be included, but not as useful as most expect. Small chance Starlink starts acquiring third tier cell phone companies and augments their 5G networks with Starlink connected towers in rural areas and perhaps at Tesla charging stations. And he just threw up examples of a Samsung phone. Tesla already has a partnership with Samsung. Elon then said, it is not out of the question for us to create our own phone. Thoughts on that, Hans?
Yeah, Warren does a good job there of nailing several things on the head. One of them being the fact that right now the technology that Starlink has at its disposal is not capable of creating a high bandwidth data network on ground. And so while Starlink does have a partnership with companies like T-Mobile to offer some data out in the middle of nowhere, it's very limited bandwidth. It's basically offering the equivalent of very, very small text messages. That like amount of data is about what they can handle communicating back and forth between the surface of the Earth and the satellites from a transmitter that is just a cell phone. That said, the need to do that, like I love the idea of Starlink starting to acquire some of these smaller cell phone providers and doing some backhaul. We already know that I think Starlink does backhaul internet traffic for some companies, that they're actually a useful piece of the internet backbone. And there's ways for them to expand their capabilities in that area and to partner with on ground networks to beef that up. Um, as far as what Warren said on partnerships, I think that also makes sense. Who knows if it's going to be Samsung or LG, but there are lots of cell phone manufacturers that Tesla does know, and Samsung is a good candidate just because there is a working relationship between Tesla and Samsung, as Warren mentioned. But there are many phone providers or phone manufacturers that Elon could have a deal done with and that could provide this hardware. And the reason obviously is that the device itself is an incredible source of data. Just I mean, this is the reason why Apple and whatever they're going to do in AI is a big question that people have in their minds, is because just like Tesla having millions of cars on the road and that providing them with a massive data advantage for FSD, the data advantage that exists right now for LLMs is laptops and tablets and cell phones. And so that's the motivation to want to do something like this if you are trying to be a competitor in the development of artificial intelligence over the next decade. And so it starts to make a lot of sense from that perspective.
Hmm. Still kind of curious to see where it would go, because you can argue it's going to be Neuralink, because why do a phone go straight to the brain? Maybe there's some sort of like instead of a handheld phone, right? Do something glasses or something like that. I bet you that's where he would go if he really was going to do this. Because the phone is old
Mhm.
technology. Could it be Could it be Tesla because they have
It depends
manufacturing
what his
capabilities?
time frame is, that there's not
Mm,
a path from here to, like, if you need lots of
yeah,
data, there's not a path between here and millions, much less billions of Neuralink devices installed
yeah, no.
anytime in the next couple. Like, it's going to take decades and decades before anything like that is
Hmm.
even remotely possible, much less likely. And so if you need lots of data right now and you need to, if you're worried about, you know, Apple's security and you're needing to eject them from your ecosystem, you have to have a replacement that you
Sure,
can drop in
sooner.
that
Mm-hmm.
is at the
Mm-hmm.
scale that you need. And so at that point in time, you do end up having to replace an equivalent device to what Apple is making. And you're not able to necessarily switch form factors just that rapidly.
Yeah, let's take a look at more in depth and conversation here that Elon is having. So he says it's patently absurd that Apple isn't smart enough to make their own AI, yet is somehow capable of ensuring that OpenAI will protect your security and privacy. Apple has no clue what's actually going on once they hand your data over to OpenAI. They're selling you down the river. This is a real shot at Apple, and I don't know why he should be picking a fight with Apple at this point. Apple could decide to drop the Tesla app from the App Store. What would he do then? Anyways, readers added this context. Apple has actually developed their own foundational models, which run on device and have approximately 3 billion parameters, basically saying they have their own AI. For tasks that require more compute, Apple either uses private cloud or OpenAI with initial confirmation. And then this guy said, Apple tricking you into believing your data is secure, right? This is like that fake, it's trying to give you an ice cream cone, but then pulls it away. Elon said, the truth is that handing your data over to digital superintelligence that Apple themselves cannot even build or understand at the operating level is insane. And then, so we'll go into his conversation with Marcus. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, two things can be true at the same time. Apple is building artificial intelligence technology in house, but there's not anyone who understands this field who would tell you that Apple's research is at the cutting edge boundary of AGI technology that OpenAI's is. And so I think maybe while he can say they don't understand this technology, and people are like, well, no, they are developing their own in-house AI. Just because they're developing their own in-house AI doesn't mean that they can understand the work that is going on inside of OpenAI. That OpenAI is further down this race than Apple is. And therefore, because Apple is not neck and neck with them in that race, Apple is at a disadvantage to understand what it is that OpenAI is doing. And if that is the case, and if OpenAI is further down the road, what they are able to do with data could, like, one of the characteristics of intelligence is that you can do with fewer data points, like what something that takes a lot more data cannot. And I think that's kind of the first principles line of reasoning that Elon is thinking about, is that if OpenAI can develop artificial super intelligence that even whatever itty bitty piece of data that Apple thinks is fine that gets sent to OpenAI, while it doesn't have any information in it that compromises you personally, if the thing that you're giving it to is smart enough, it can use that data to figure out those
Mhm.
other things about you that are compromising, that are sensitive, and they can do that because they're intelligent and they're able to infer relationships and possibilities and situations and data
Mm.
that is not necessarily present in the data. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do, is to make a system that is able to fill in the gaps in a smart way between pieces of data that don't necessarily say that, whatever that thing is. And so I think that's the concern.
Yeah.
And then, so that sets up this tension that a lot of people are going to say, Elon, you don't know what you're talking about. They're developing their own stuff. Of course, they understand what they're doing. And, I don't know if that is or is not true, but I can understand both sides of the argument.
Mhm. Let's listen to the debate between Marcus Brownlee, who's one of the top YouTubers out there, uh, device kind of technology reviewers. So he said this basic summary of Apple Intelligence so far, right? So it's on device, large language and diffusion models that deliver helpful features across iPhone and other devices with on device semantic index that can bring in information across your devices and apps. Private cloud compute allows it to draw on larger server based models while protecting your privacy. Servers they created using Apple Silicon, your data is never stored or sent to Apple. Okay, so we know that Apple's really uh, anyone out there they care more about privacy and security. This isn't a single app or Siri 2.0, but it's cooked into their software all over the place. And then Elon replied to him saying, Apple using the words protect your privacy while handing your data over to a third party AI that they don't understand and can't themselves create is not protecting privacy at all. Um, Users came in and said the assumption made here misrepresents what was actually announced. Apple Intelligence is Apple's own creation, and ChatGPT access entirely separate and controlled by the user. You control when ChatGPT is used and will be asked before any of your information is shared. So Apple kind of is saying that you have to first opt in to use ChatGPT when you want to. Marcus says, I asked Tim Cook. He said Apple at no point sends any of your data to OpenAI without explicit user permission. He's going to create a video on this later. And then Elon replied to him saying, here's the problem. You can agree to share your data, but nobody actually reads the terms and conditions. I agreed by accident. I don't know what this is. Can you explain this?
Yeah, he's just making the point that if you offer someone the option to opt in to use ChatGPT, that 99.9% of users are not technically aware enough to understand what the implications of doing that are. And the point that he did make, that, Apple is not, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, Apple is not able to create the LLMs that OpenAI is able to create right now. That doesn't mean they're not able to create some LLMs. That doesn't mean they can't create AI technology. But Elon is saying that Apple does not grok, it does not fully deeply comprehend the work that's going on inside of OpenAI. Since they can't reproduce it yet, that means that they can't understand it. And because they can't understand what OpenAI, what,
Yeah.
GPT-4, 4.0, 5 are from a fundamental first principle standpoint, that they are incapable, if they don't even know what the system is, they're incapable of being able to ensure that whatever information they're providing to OpenAI does not compromise your security and privacy. And I think that he's correct in that specific piece of analysis and that
Mm-hmm.
observation.
Yeah. So it's looking like he's going to be put against the wall, Elon, to create his own phone, and he's going to have to ban iPhones, and he's going to create a war with Apple, Microsoft, and OpenAI. I don't know how this is going to play out, but let's listen to what Dan Ives thinks of what he heard.
Can you tell us why Elon Musk doesn't want to attend?
Because Musk, it's sour grapes. Because ultimately, this is what he wanted to do. From a Tesla perspective, obviously there's a beef with OpenAI going back, years. But this is essentially Apple in their castle saying it's our data, it's our customers. You're not going to have access. But I believe Musk. This could be just some stress going to shareholder meeting this week. He's not going to ban iPhones, in my opinion.
In super simple terms, can you explain what his complaint actually is? What's he concerned about?
He's basically concerned about Apple and OpenAI having access to the data and no one else has access to it. And that what he speaks to will be a broader concern among other tech players because Apple has a castle that no one else has. They have the devices. It's 1.5 billion iPhones worldwide. And they're saying it's mi casa, not su casa.
I don't know about that. But okay, it's concerning. OpenAI is going to have access to so much data, and he's competing. So he created XAI to compete against OpenAI. So it sounds like that's got a lot to do with, right? Elon is getting threatened, going, oh my gosh. And he might have tried to push hard for Apple to, use XAI as their default. Apple did say that I think I heard that they said that they can swap it out. Like right now, it's a partnership with OpenAI, but if they're in China, they might partner with Baidu. They might swap it out, like you said at the very beginning. Like they have their Google search is the default search, but they can swap it out if they wanted to. Yeah. Final thoughts on all this. What's the likelihood?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Elon's beef ultimately, kind of to push back on Dan a little bit, is the specific partnership with OpenAI. I think if Elon had a way to say any Apple like the thing is he can't guarantee, there's not currently a way that I'm aware of, that he said any devices that are Apple devices that are on premise at my locations, I cannot, if I could guarantee that those are not allowed to communicate with OpenAI, I think he would be fine with it. I think he's fine with Apple and their privacy and security infrastructure as long as they are not sending that information to what Elon views as the most dangerous player in the AI race, especially when he believes that AI poses an existential risk to humanity. And so he views that as contributing to a possibility that AI ends up killing all of humanity. And so for that reason, I would disagree with Dan that he very well might ban all Apple device. Like if there's not a way for him to say any user that comes on premise cannot have an Apple device that is communicating with OpenAI. If he doesn't have that ability, he very well could go through with this ban. So yeah, I think that's I won't be surprised to see that in the least.
Yeah, he does not want to create a phone, but if he's forced to, he's going to now fight head on with Apple. And I don't want Elon to fight with Apple. Apple should be their friend, but his concerns are legitimate though, Elon.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, thank you so much.
And if you look at this partnership and all of what Apple is doing from the perspective of Tim Cook, who is a finance guy and he's a supply chain guy, like all of these decisions make sense from his perspective. And I understand why he is making the decisions that he's making. But this is one of the pitfalls that you run into when you run one of the largest tech companies in the world and you don't have deep personal experience with developing the product itself, and you're more logistics and infrastructure. And so that's where I think someone who's coming from a logistics, supply chain, and finance background is going to have a fundamental disagreement with somebody like Elon, who is a technology guy. And that's where I don't know how you avoid this conflict, because I don't think that Tim Cook is capable of understanding Elon's concerns at a deep enough level not to, or at a deep enough level to be willing to change course. And so I think that Apple is going to continue to move forward on the course that they're on. I mean, you got to think these are giant Titanic ships. Like you don't change course on the Titanic, even when you're headed towards the iceberg fast enough not to sink. And I think that, Elon and Tim are kind of on a collision course right now that it's going to take a miracle to avert.
Thank you so much, Hans. Appreciate your expertise. Follow him on his YouTube channel. He'll talk a lot more about this, dive deeper. You can see him on YouTube at Hans C. Nelson. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.